Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. Make sure you're liking and subscribing either on YouTube or Spotify. And of course, we're available 24 hours a day online at brewermag.com. We are sponsored by Keg Logistics and Square. Running a restaurant is a lot. You start out with a vision for something special, but that vision gradually gets overshadowed by the day-to-day of it all. Well, that's the thing I love about Square, is how it helps take some of that pressure off so you can actually enjoy why you started in the first place. When Square steps in, helping you save on food costs, you get your menu seen by millions on Cash App and get delivery app payouts faster. So it frees up time and mental energy in a world where both are typically short. Square, here for the magic that's not on the menu. Go to square.com/goodstuff to get started. That's square.com/goodstuff. And this month is National Women's History Month, and it's a great moment to make sure that we're recognizing leadership across the industry, like Leah Watt Ashburn, who was last week here on the Brewer Magazine podcast from Highland Brewing. And now today's conversation in the cider realm is about the business behind intentional growth in Colorado. I had the chance to speak with Kari Williams, who's founder and head cider maker at Snowcap Cider. From a high elevation orchard in Colorado to a fully estate-driven model, Williams has built a family cidery that leans heavily into control of fruit, process, and a long-term vision. We get into what that actually means from an operational and financial standpoint, and how elevation, and terroir translate beyond marketing language, and how Snowcapped is navigating that market. It's kind of splitting between that high ABV innovation, more sessionable, and NA options. There's a lot out there, and we talk about the decision to expand into a tap room there, along with a wine bar, and where Kari sees both opportunity and risk as the business continues to scale. Our talk here on the Cider Business and Brewer Magazine podcast with Kari Williams of Snowcap Cider. This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency. And we're joined here on the Brewer Magazine and Cider Business podcast with Kari Williams of Snowcap Cider. Kari, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about who you guys are, what you're all about, and kind of where you guys have gone on over this last decade plus now.
Well, we are a family-owned orchard business on the western slope of Colorado. We grow our fruit between 6,130 and 7,000 feet. So I'm an orchard-based, agricultural-based cider company. And we've been making cider, I guess we're coming up on our 14th anniversary now.
And in the the mile high area that you are growing apples at over 6,000 feet, that has to be something that is you either see as an advantage or a disadvantage. You guys are saying it's an advantage, and reading through your website, kind of like the story that you guys tell about Snowcap, but and being the Surface Creek terroir as a competitive advantage for you guys. But if you get rid of that language, where does it actually show up when it comes to making hard cider and running a business where you guys are located?
The cider business came as an afterthought, and it was just me wanting to do it. My family, obviously, and our kids are 5th generation growers. And so everyone in our family works at growing fruit at this elevation. We've been here 115 years and 5 generations doing what we're doing, upwards of 7,000 feet, which is really pretty difficult to pull off, especially staying relevant for over a century in fruit growing in this area. We grow at the bottom of the Grand Mesa, which is the largest flat top mountain in the world. And so we're on the slope of that mesa. And it definitely has its challenges. One of the things that got me into cider really, and thinking about, I love apples and our family are really into it. And we have a lot of fruit. We grow peaches. We grow some stone fruit and things like that. We also make wine and grow wine grapes here. So I had a little bit of a background in that, and which interested me in cider. But what really pulled me into cider was the elevation, and the reason why that, we're the largest apple producers in the state of Colorado. And why is that? And how it relates to this absolutely fabulous fruit that my family have grown for fresh pack grocery for over a century. We've never sold an apple at a farmer's market. So my family becomes specialists at trucking fruit out of this little remote valley on the western slope. And really, when I started kind of going down that rabbit hole, I just never turned around and have just kept going and doing more research and understanding more about high elevation growing. So, really, when you pull everything back, a lot of people will talk about growing at elevation, being cold nights, warm days, temperature shifts, things like that. It really is a lot of those things in combination, which makes the terroir so special. It is a lot to do with UV exposure on the fruit. So what I get and how it relates to what I make is absolutely premium high elevation fruit. The elevation and how it relates to the fruit is that, I don't just get high sugar content in culinary varietals. I get increased sugar content, acid, and a remarkable third thing, which is 30% more tannin, coming from that UV exposure, John.
And you kind of touched on it that, being at elevation does change some of the production things, especially, and I know as a home brewer, knowing people that live in higher elevations, there's always that conversion rate. How about in cider? Is there conversions in cider compared to maybe someone that's closer to sea level when it comes to operational things that you guys have kind of had to learn along the way, like you said, when you started, things adjusted for you?
Yeah. I think a lot of the difference you'd see is just the massive amount of sugar content we get in the fruit. And so adjustments, not really, I wouldn't know anything really any different. One thing I can tell you is, when you're fermenting French or English bitter sharp apples, cider specific fruit that are really high in tannin, when we ferment that type of stuff, you'll see that I don't make imperial ciders. I don't make imperial ciders because I don't need to do that method and adjustment to get that high ABV in many of those varietals due to where I'm growing the fruit. And so I've got things even in my can line, not just my bottle line, but that are, over 8%, 8.5, 8.2, 7.2, and which is pretty high for cider, but that's naturally occurring high elevation ABV. So I wouldn't say we had to adjust anything, but when the regulation was 6.9 for everything, I had to blend down on a lot of my stuff to meet that requirement, because I naturally, especially in certain varietals, I naturally can get that ABV pretty high.
And that's got to be kind of like a relief when things were finally kind of changed for you guys, and being able to create larger.
It got much easier to make what we naturally can make with the fruit that we grow. And it was awesome. It was great. So I didn't have to worry about it anymore, or blend it down, or thin it out, or whatever I had to do to make sure that I was in the range.
You talked about this being, a fifth generation family company. So the orchard was there. You guys start doing the hard cider about, like you said, 14 years ago, being integrated from orchard to bottle. Like, how does that give you an edge, especially in today's market? Like you said, you're not trucking in, you're not having to work with extra logistics. You're able to do everything kind of on site and be able to get the logistics the other way with your distributor getting it out the door.
Right. It's great. There's certain challenges to it still, though. I mean, a lot of people would think that it's a huge benefit, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's, like I said, it's very labor intensive. So in February, I finished juicing. I started in August last year with early galas, and I finished juicing 6 days a week. I finished in the 1st of February. So, to get that volume of juice, it's very labor intensive, and you have to think about storage things and how you're going to manage it. And, I think it has a massive advantage to me for making quality products. But I don't think that a lot of people realize what a logistical challenge it is, and how much easier it is, like I said, to just back that truck up from someone else's farm that it's already juiced, and you pump it directly to a tank. With me, I am using all of the fruit that my family doesn't sell to Fresh Pack Grocery comes to me, which makes them a zero waste company. So everything that's coming off of our packing lines, they're not selling to grocery on the culinary apple side, is coming off of sorters going right into my juice bin. So the second we pick an apple, I'm on task to juice. I'm using every bit of that, which makes them a zero waste company, and obviously contributes to me growing my cider business. In addition to that, though, I've had to, over the years, plant my own orchards as well that are just for snow-capped cider, that are dedicated to cider fruit only, and specific heirlooms that I want to use for my higher end programs and stuff. So, like I said, most of it, I think, it's a blessing, and it is other things as well. Logistically, you can't just juice something without fermenting it or storing it frozen. So we're like a Rubik's Cube moving things around constantly. And I'm using that juice all year long for my products as an estate company. And so logistically, it's a challenge. It's labor intensive, and it is, costly. It's a cost, sure. I think, that many cider companies that are just making modern cider and that type of thing, they don't really have it. To me, it's vitally important, and I want to know where the fruit came from. I want to know how it's grown. It's important that it's a single source, that we're growing it in certain ways. All of our cider fruit is organic. It's direct snow melt water from the Grand Mesa. There's no water treatment stops. There's no, it's gravity fed to our orchards. So there's lots of nuances to the fruit that I get, in addition to the high elevation growing, that really makes that worth it, at least to me.
Sure. And you kind of mentioned this, that, being labor intensive, being logistic on site intensive, you have to almost, when it comes to storage, you kind of have to limit yourself unless you have more room to be able to put more tanks, more storage. Like, you're looking a year ahead every time, and to think, or years ahead. I mean, how much planning are you thinking right now, looking to say 2030, 2031, just because of the fact that, if we're growing this way, or we're going towards that way, we need more space, more storage, more tank. Like, how much are you always looking at that kind of stuff?
Always. And, like, everything that I do right now is, dependent upon that year's harvest and the projections that are coming from the orchards. And so, sure, if I need fruit, I can order it from somewhere and send a semi, or, have it delivered. I'm still going to juice it on site. And I, very particular if I have to do that to supplement something. Or occasionally there's apples on farms in Washington that I'm familiar with from being growers for so long. We are very familiar with other growers and other growing families. And I'll order a truck of their fruit, knowing their growing practices, and have visited their farm, just to trial and see if it's something I want to grow. And I'll bring it in for a minute and test it and work with it. But honestly, I am constantly projecting for the whole year, because I'm using that juice. And, my volume is growing every year. And so it's quite a challenge. It's a lot of what I'm doing all the time is constantly planning, moving things around, looking at, sales volume, what kind of juice volume I need. Pretty much everything that I make is a different blend of apples. I'm not using just one thing. I don't get in just a blended whatever and make 15 cans out of it and 70 bottles. Everything that I bring in is juiced a particular way and kept in a vessel in a particular way, whether it be a blend or a single varietal. So it is a ton of planning. There's a lot of spreadsheets go on around here. So and I'm constantly changing and moving and working on it. And so it's a process. As far as massive growth, we are looking at several different things. The orchards are getting larger. And, things that I planted 15 years ago are really coming in full force with cider apples. I've had, I think in January, we spoke out and I was like, I still have 1,000 bins to juice. So, I had so much fruit. But it's really amazing because I'm in a facility that is set for long-term fruit storage because we're fruit growers. And so I can stage fruit in the fruit coolers as it comes in. They're packing and shipping and I'm storing and moving it. And, I have fruit coolers here on site. We're fruit growers. So that's very helpful to the situation. It's still a giant moving Rubik's Cube. And in the fall, when the cider fruit comes in, we're working hard. I miss a lot of winter activities in the industry because simply I am, fermenting and working on bottled ciders and things that I have to be here for. I cannot leave.
Sure.
So, that's when it's go time for us is to that fruit. There's certain things you need to juice early. There's certain things, you don't. But that fruit comes in late and so I'm working on it all through the winter. So for new bottle releases and things like that.
Who is your consumer and how have you found them, spoke to them, created what Snowcap can be to them? Like how much thought process goes into that and continually finding, either a new consumer, bringing back people that, are maybe moving away from something, beer or spirits or something like that, and or wine. It seems like wine's having a terrible last few years. But at the maybe cider's the one that is seemingly benefiting from that. How have you guys adapted your message to what Snowcapped is to most consumers?
I think Snowcapped cider it really naturally gravitates towards a quality beverage. And also, when you have it, you're like, wow, this tastes a lot different than anyone else. Why? And that's always kind of been our message, is really farm to bottle can, but even a step further than saying that. We really go the distance for things like, sure, I make modern ciders. I make a botanical cider. We hand zest 600 pounds of lemons because that's what's important to us as a brand. Yeah. And, we're not really looking to grow and sell out and not be something we're not. And so I think that message with the consumer, kind of resonates. I think the other thing is, my favorite thing is to teach people how you can drink a bourbon barrel aged Kingston Black or something and even come into our tap room and think that you don't really like cider. It's just because you haven't had the right one. And so, we make a lot of different styles of cider. I'm still progressing. I'm still learning. I'm, doing tons of trials. I've got tons of fruit coming on. I'm moving things around the farm. I'm trialing different years and flavors and doing all kinds of interesting research for cider and for our brand. And, the really, really wonderful thing about that is that I do not have to be in a big hurry to do it. I'm not in a big rush about it. I don't need to be. Making cider for me is a true passion, and, bringing back historical varietals and things like that and working with the things that I have. I feel so blessed to have the situation that I'm in to make cider, the fruit that I have, that I think that the quality of the product, the awards that we win, the continual, release of new products, the bandwidth of cider we make English Perry, we make red flushed rosé cider, we make, things that are botanical in a can. We've pretty much done all of those things. So we have a massive offering, and I think it easily targets lots of different levels of the consumer market, without us really even having to say anything about it. So we're able to pop out lots of different styles of cider pretty easily. Like I said, we're not using one blend of juice that I have to add things to make it taste a certain way. So that extra effort that you put in with the actual fruit, I think really shows up in the product. And I think that's really what we're going for and what we are striving to be known for. Do we have room to grow bigger? We do. We could sell a lot more cider than we are right now, even, and we are set for growth. I think it's important as a business owner to, move into those growth sectors very carefully and methodically and with a lot of thought and planning, and not be too hurried about those things.
And you've mentioned some of them, and the fact that you get to work, and look for single varietals to work with. Like, how much are you looking at? What do you like right now? And you kind of touched on this too. Like, how does it relate to the consumer, and what single varietals can mean to a consumer, and maybe how cider can be more forthcoming and transparent and getting that out there to kind of help that. You see that all the time in beer with single hop type beers. Like, why not a single varietal like it? And do you see the importance in it? This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency. Running a restaurant is a lot. You start out with a vision for something special, but that vision gradually gets overshadowed by the day-to-day of it all. Now, the thing that I love about Square is how it helps take some of that pressure off of you so you can actually enjoy why you started in the first place. When Square steps in, helping you save on food costs, get your menu seen by millions on Cash App, and get delivery app payouts faster, it frees up time and mental energy in a world where both are typically in short supply. Square, here for the magic that's not on the menu. Go to square.com/goodstuff to get started. That's square.com/goodstuff.
I absolutely love single varietals, and I have, I think, 46 single varietals in my lines between bottles, specialty, all my different bottle lines, and several bunch in cans too. When I first started doing it, I want to speak to the consumer and tell them a proper story about cider and the history of the apple, and I want them to learn what that particular apple should taste like. Do you know what I mean? Because they're so randomly different, and cider can be so much more akin to wine and be almost like a beer and all different things. And I think, putting it out to the consumer that this is what this particular varietal, this is a Gravenstein apple, this is the history of it, this is what it's supposed to taste like, is on my part very hopeful to train the consumer to think how different these varietals have, their own perfume, their own aroma, their own flavor profile, their own mixture of acid and sugar, and their own tannin, and how it's balanced and the way that it should be, to teach you and take you on a journey in cider to help you find what you really love. But the problem with single varietals is that I think that, one, blending can add so much more depth to a lot of different single varietal apples, which I love and I think is fabulous. But single varietals today are often so if I'm putting out a single varietal in a can to say, hey, wow, I have this, I've grown this. This is 100% single varietal. It's very intentional. It's very special. I don't know that the consumer is really getting that, the depth of what it took to grow that, how hard it is, biannual, how it came in, how much of it you have to really present that in that way.
Yeah.
Because what you're seeing in cider in the industry is those same cans or bottles coming out, and they're calling it that name, and it's a blended version of the apple. So I think it makes it really difficult to talk to the consumer in that way. Like, this is a single varietal, it's very special. I think there's a lot of interest from the consumer about single varietals and learning about fruit and the history and how beautiful that is. But I think it's very difficult. It's just a muddy water. You see what I'm saying? I think it's just hard, because if you put out an Ashmead's kernel that's 100% single varietal, but there's 5 other Ashmead's kernel that are blended, they're supposed to be 80% that apple, but they're blended with 5 other things. Are we really giving the consumer the opportunity to understand that they have this very special sense of place and origin and unique flavor profile and the story behind what a true single varietal can be? So that's an unknown, I would say. It's a difficult, like I said, muddy water. Single varietals, although I love them.
You get to especially when you're across a bar from someone, to be able to tell those type of stories and introduce them to things. And you guys finally got a chance to do that. It's about 2 years now since you guys have opened your tasting room and wine bar. Does that sound about right? So, obviously you guys have been around for 14 years. Not to be so direct, but what would you wait for so long? Was it something you needed to build
a lot
towards?
Of things. I mean, we're so isolated, like, on the western slope of Colorado, and we're not really even near a big town. So, I mean, I think our little hometown is, 3,000 people. And so we're not on, the major thoroughway for lots of traffic. And so it really was never my intention to have a goal of opening our first tap room in our hometown in Cedar Edge. And the reason was, obviously, the demographic wouldn't be right really to make money there. We don't have enough traffic and tourism there. But we're 5.5 hours from Denver, over the mountain. And so back in the day when we first started, we would have to drive over there for festivals. We'd have a whole crew, staying in hotels and serving cider, in the Mile High City. Just to get our brand word out. And that's really where, in Colorado anyway, a major part of our distribution is in Denver on the Front Range. Sure, we do fine on the western slope, but we're not very big over here. There's not a lot of things. But I think, when I came back and opened, there was an abandoned building in our hometown. It's a 1940s gas station. It was at the only stoplight in our town. And, I kind of had my eye on it and thought it would be a great remodel. I told everybody when I opened our people know we're fruit growers here, obviously. We're a large fruit growing company, and they know we've been here. But, realistically, I wasn't really talking that much about cider in our hometown. Wasn't my focus. I spent the first 10 years on wholesale distribution and trying to build the brand and make it profitable, and worked in it myself to do it. And so I sold very little cider in our hometown. My distributor didn't even come up there. So when I opened the doors at the tap room, it was more of a prideful thing to say, this is what I'm doing out in the industry of cider with the fruit that we've grown here for over a century. And these are all the awards that we've won. And this is what I've been doing all these years. And why no one ever sees me or talks to me, because I work in that orchard I'm just like immersed in cider, and I hardly ever even poke my head out. And so it was really awesome to say, back in the day in our area in the 70s, there were orchards of 1,000 acres in size here. This was a major fruit growing area, and we're the last family here. And so it was really kind of a prideful thing to say, hey, I went out and done something really special with our high elevation fruit. And I wanted to bring it back to our community and say, hey, these are varietals and tasting notes from some of the most famous apples in the world that, by the way, we grow here. And that was a really amazing thing. And I thought it was, time, and I could afford to do it. I could afford to open a tap room there without expecting a landslide return from it. And so that was extremely meaningful to the brand. And we're seeing people come over from I-70, go over the Grand Mesa, drop down into Little Cedar Ridge because they followed our brand for years and they love the product. And we finally have a tasting room. And so we're really contributing to the community. It's a beautiful location. It's a place where you can come and get, I carry 70 bottles in there that I don't distribute everywhere. So if you're a cider geek and a cider nerd and you've followed us, what a fun thing to come, from the Front Range, and Coloradans, and people love to travel. And I have seen people from all over the place in our tap room since I've opened it. So it's been really just a really wonderful experience. I'd say that to make it shorter than what I just told you would be, I opened the tap room there instead of Denver because I could.
Sure.
And because it was meaningful to me. Will it be our only tap room? Probably not. We do hope to open a tap room in a larger demographic and share, more cider and find things with, an area that we can access more people to enjoy it. But it's been a really great experience. It's been really wonderful. It's a ton of work. It's a great location. The remodel's beautiful. We have a great outdoor patio sitting area, and my staff are training to be sommeliers as well, and they're very well trained in cider. They will bring you out my cider maker's flight that I change every week from our highest awarded bottles, internationally. And they'll tell you all about each individual single varietal or blend, or how I've purposefully done it, where the apple originated from, what the flavor profile is, and put it out in beautiful Bordeaux wine glasses, and really try and teach you about cider. And we have won over so many people from beer and wine doing that. So honestly, it's my small little place that I can teach people about the history of cider and flavor profiles cider can be, one at a time.
With it being there, having people across the bar at the tap room, you get to show your culture of who you are a little more than outside of what's written on the website, what's posted on social media. What was something important for you guys to showcase? Either, this is who we are. How can we continue to show people what it means to be a part of Snowcap Cider, and and then be able to, it tells them a different message, and than outside of just what you were writing down before and saying.
Right. It does. I think if you stand behind my bar at Snowcap Cider, especially if I'm in the building, you're going to get as much apple history about every single thing I give you a taste on that you can sit for. Because I'm really excited about it. I'm really happy about it. And a lot of times if I'm in there and someone orders a cider maker's flight, I serve it personally. I can't work in there all the time, but I do. I'm in there a lot. And so you're going to get a personal experience from me, and you're going to hear where and what elevation they came from. And in my elevation series, you're going to hear me say, this is a topography map of the exact elevation that is written on the bottle, the number. This is the exact topography map of the elevation number on my elevation series bottle. And this is the lot and block location of all of the apples I picked from every location at this elevation that are blended into this bottle. And this is why I blended them. And this is the apples that I used to sweeten the cider. I used culinary pink ladies for this and that and that. And you're going to hear all of that from me as you're tasting. You're going to hear, the history of every single varietal and why I love it and the flavor profile that it brings. And sometimes the award it's won too. If I think it's just, if I'm fresh out of competition, I'm pretty excited about it. And it did this. So you're going to get a lot of that coming across the bar. And honestly, even the staff in there, if they're like, well, I don't like sweet cider, but you give them a round of sweeter ciders that are very high end, they're going to learn right away that they probably do like sweeter cider. It's just not the type of sweet cider that they're used to. Or I'm going to be able to give them like a single varietal Dabinette that is going to have a mouthfeel that makes them wonder if it was sweet or not, but it's actually fermented 100% dry. And so because of the varietal or the elevation I've grown it or whatever. So, I love to work the bar just to hear about people, their experience as they drink through flights and try new ciders and go, wow, I didn't think I'd like this. I've never had cider before, or, we're so glad we stopped in. And they're always leaving with products and things to try. And that's just really worthwhile, isn't it? It's fun. Cider's a journey. Wine's a journey. Beer's a journey. You start and you become interested, and your palate changes over the course of trying different things and evolving. And I think depending on who's sitting at your bar, everyone is at a different place in their journey.
Well, as both a cider maker and owner, you guys, obviously have been rooted in the agriculture of that area. What's been maybe the hardest part of being showing yourself, establishing credibility? I think when you're walking into it, you already kind of have the card of, we've been doing this for a while when you started. But did you find, when you first started, how hard was it to kind of get Snowcap started?
It was really hard. So, I have to tell you, I don't know, the determination that it took on my part to keep doing it all these years and to get it to where it was profitable was a lot. When I first started, we had been experimenting in the back of one of our old packing sheds in town and doing it. And the family was all on one wine license, because we make wine and we have vineyards, and that's kind of like our hobby. And so they were kind of like, what are you doing with all these bottles and stuff? And why are you spending all this money? What are you doing? You need to make this a business, or quit buying all this stuff. And so I was like, well, I'm going to do it. And they were all like, that's funny. That's great. And so I started out, and, I was still on the wine license with the family, and I'm just getting really passionate about cider, and they thought I was nuts. And, I'm wanting to plant cider apples all over the orchards and things. And we had quite a few already, and a lot of old heirlooms and stuff. And, they thought I was nuts and wouldn't let me and didn't want it and whatnot. So they were like, great, go ahead and do your thing, but make money. And so interestingly enough, I started out, I had no budget. I had no money. I had no employees. I had nothing but apples. That's all I had. And me. And so, I kind of hit the road, and it was a lot of festivals, working myself long days, 5.5-hour one-way drives to go get into them. It was me knocking at the door on liquor stores, alone, just me, talking to people about a product, especially back then, that nobody really wanted and no buyer really thought they had room for, and they still don't. But they didn't, they might have had one cooler door with 2 shelves of cider back then, and all of those problems. And so it was complicated. So what I had was a sales and marketing background, which was helpful. And I had a product that I believed in. And so it didn't matter what door that I knocked on. I had a product that they kind of didn't want. But if I could get them to listen to me about my fruit and about the elevation and about how excited I was and how wonderful it was, and get them to taste it, I generally could place it. And I just kept doing that. And finally, I established a self-distribution territory and into the mountains. And, we delivered there weekly, rain or shine, 2 feet of snow or not. And so, each little tiny step was hard, and it took a lot of dedication. And I really didn't make anything. I didn't make any money, which was okay. This is a luxury I have. I've never paid myself in this business. I live off of our fruit growing income. My husband's a fruit grower. That's what we do. Mm-hmm. And so everything that I've ever done, I've been lucky enough to put back into Snowcap Cider. Every bit of passion, every bit of energy. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm almost 60 years old. I'm still doing it. And I still feel like I have so much to learn and teach and share. And I just go every day, all day long. And my whole family works like that in the orchards, because in Colorado, we don't just shut down for the winter. We prune all winter, even in the snow. And we also grow in Texas as well. And so my family's coming back and forth from those orchards and vineyards and whatnot. But I'm lucky enough today. So each hard thing built onto another thing. Finally, I got into cans. Finally, I built up enough distribution on my own to get a distributor. And then I went to the next thing. And then I went to the next thing. And then I went to the next thing. So it's been difficult. And, as a woman in the business, I don't know that I would say it was overcomplicated or terrible. I just feel like it wouldn't have mattered in cider if I was a woman or a man. They really didn't want to talk to me about cider. They didn't want to talk to anybody about cider. They didn't really care that much about it. And now you see today, there's 4 coolers in big liquor stores with cider, and it's amazing. And to be part of that growth and to be, have experienced that, and to now be, a prominent place, shelf placeholder in the Front Range market in most all liquor stores with Snowcap Cider is really awesome. And so I don't take that for granted. But it's hard. I mean, it takes a lot of business knowledge, a lot of planning, a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of rejection. Like,
oh, sure.
I mean, it was a lot of rejection. But in my opinion, very worthwhile. And honestly, back to the fruit, I had the fruit. I had the piece that a lot of cider makers don't have. And honestly, everything I do is driven by the fruit, by the apple. The apple drives me to do what I do. I mean, the history of it, the quality of fruit, how hard my family works to do it at this elevation, the complicated growing that we do, and to see the harvest come in and it's all working at it. It's extremely meaningful. So the hard work is totally worth it, but it was not easy. Yeah. It takes a lot of planning and strategic, planning of the next blend. And is it time to put out a blend of French and English cider apples in a can? Mm-hmm. Is it time to put out, a cocktail inspired something? And those decisions, fall on me. And, I'm still tasting every batch that comes out of the facility. I am in charge of every single thing that is released. I'm managing all of that fruit we talked about. So it's a lot. It's a labor of love. I mean, growing to the next level, which is a large scale cider company, that's a big leap from where I'm at. Mm-hmm. The processes that I'm doing right now, those special nuances that I'm able to do, and I'm lucky enough to do with the fruit that I have, they're not as doable at that level.
Right.
So, I think you're always in that position as a business owner and a business mind of what is the right next step to take.
It's got to be tough to, say that, where we are, where the industry is, how the industry is going, to say, we've found our place, mm-hmm. versus let's keep pushing the pedal. I mean, that, because you might feel that, okay, like you said, we could grow more, probably faster if you wanted to, but then when do you lose, like you said, the processes and the management, okay, well, yeah, we can grow to this, but it's not going to be the way that I was going to be able to do it day to day anymore. I mean,
right.
How are those thought processes going forward for you?
That's an okay thing. I'm a team player. I like everybody to be on a team with me. Like when I hire you to even work in my tap room, it's explained very clearly that you're going to work festivals beside me. I expect you to be out in the market with me. You're part of my brand, and this means everything to me. So you're representing me. And I have no problem surrounding myself with people that know more than me, that can do things with me and to move the brand along. I can recognize that, and I know the value of it. And it's honestly where I'm at today in order to take the next step, or to get a little bit more volume. I'm set for volume, but I am having, conflicts with things that I might have to give up. When I first got a canning line, this is a really good example. I was in bottles, and I thought that fine cider should all be in bottles back then. And we all evolve. And in order to take the company to a profitable state, I had to buy a canning line and go into cans. But I remember the process of thinking back then was fine cider's not in cans. I drink fine cider. I travel to Europe and France and drink cider. I've had it. I know what it is. And that is, to me, not what I want to make. That's not what I'm growing this fruit for. That's not what I want to do. So I bought a canning line, and it sat in the packing facility for a year before I uncrated it. Isn't that crazy? So, so because I had to get square with what I wanted to put in it, how I wanted to make it, and how I was going to present it in a way that felt true to me. And so I think you just work through these processes as you go. And like I said, I've had the luxury of time. I'm not a company that is out to, be just a mass profit company. I'm really driven by quality, and I have, the privilege of being able to do that. And, when you step up to bigger levels, you do have to make some decisions, not necessarily a lot of concessions. I will have to rearrange things to keep things as I want them, but it's doable. So yeah, it's all a big growing process. It's been a really wonderful journey, and I'm looking forward to the next steps as they come and they feel true. But I do think that you have to be, very careful about those choices.
Well, I appreciate, the opportunity to talk with you and get your insights and be able to share stuff like that. So thank you very much for that. I love getting to hear from all this stuff that, you guys have going on, what you think about what's going on in the industry. But I always like ending it with some fun stuff, get to know you a little bit, get outside of cider and what Kari's all about. You ready for a couple fun questions to wrap this thing up?
I guess so.
This one's pretty easy, and you'd already talked about your history. So, but maybe you can, you had some other aspects of it. If you weren't in the cider world, what would the career be, strange or not? Like if there's something you wanted to get into other than what you're into right now, like what would you be doing?
I really love creative flavor sharing, and I always have. We've had several restaurants that I've ran, so I'm really into that. I really love creating and making things. I'm really into that. I'd probably just go all the way into wine. If apples were there was no more apples in my life, and there was not one apple on the planet, I would immediately turn to wine grains. So, and I would, I'm planting them now. I am getting more into wine. I make wine and sell wine. We featured at the tap room, and I have very few small accounts that I do. I pour at a lot of wine festivals and attend and promote a lot of Colorado wineries too. I'm very into wine. So I think wine would be the natural thing that I would go into. I don't think that I'm the type of person to just say, well, I retired and I was a good cider maker and I did okay and everything was wonderful and I'm just going to slow down and do nothing. So I would probably get roped into working in some part of the family's businesses, marketing fruit, selling apples. It would probably be that if I didn't get to go in wine. So those are the two things. I would probably head more into assisting, some of our other operations if I wasn't so into cider. or I would probably just go into wine. So I don't know. So the answer is I probably wouldn't get out of it.
Yeah. You kind of bring something up, but I want to ask you your thoughts on it, because cider is so kind of, it weaves its way through beer and wine. And when it comes to festival time, which ones do you like the most? Do you like going to cider only festivals, wine festivals, and then beer festivals? Like, the crowds are all probably a little different. Like, do you have a favorite? Do you have a thought process of when you go, how you guys approach what you do?
I remember a time when I first started, and I would go to beer festivals and they did not want us there. I don't know if anyone else had that experience, but they did not want us there. They were like, oh my gosh, they're letting cider in, and it was always a beer festival back then because we weren't accepted at wine festivals then.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a good combination of both. Last year we did Great American Beer Fest, and it was the first time I'd ever even been there. And it was so fun, and it was amazing, and it was huge, and it was really cool. But, going to Great American Beer Festival wouldn't have been like an aspiration of mine. I'm not a beer drinker. But taking cider to Great American Beer Festival, that is awesome. And so I tend to like wine festivals. And the reason why now, I've done both. We do both. And we do quite a few festivals because there's such a demographic gap from where there's a lot of people for us. We have to kind of do a combination of different things, from Telluride, jazz festival to whatever. We're everywhere. So I tend to like wine festivals, and this is why. A high-end wine drinker, a person that understands flavors in wine, is an easy crossover to high-end cider. And I love teaching wine drinkers how to love cider, especially bottled cider. And it's an easy crossover, and it's an easy conversation for me to have. And I love pouring at wine festivals, and I love bringing out beautiful bottles with lovely stories about apples that we grow and that are grown all over, and the history of them, and showing a wine drinker how certain apples have certain aromas and how they're broken into categories, just like wine grapes, and they're affected by terroir, and they have their own perfume and aroma and flavor and complexity and mouthfeel and all these things. And so for me, I like to go with my staff to work beer festivals and let them stand up and talk about our products and pour from taps from, the keg products. But my favorite thing is to work wine festivals. And occasionally I take a bunch of cider, really beautiful cider bottles, and some wine. And I talk about both. And I think that would be my favorite. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The last one, if you had a chance to host a dinner, a cider dinner, you get to showcase this with 3 guests, dead or alive, who's at the table with you?
Boy, I don't know. That's hard. That would be hard, because if I don't pick the right ones, they might hear it and feel like I left them out. Tom Oliver would be one.
Okay.
He's absolutely my cider hero, and I think he's just wonderful. Probably maybe a winemaker from the Bordeaux region, maybe a really amazing Pommeau maker, famous Pommeau maker, and Tom Oliver. 3 people.
Sounds like you'd have a lot of fun talking.
I would just, or I would just listen.
Well, awesome.
That's a hard question, though. There's so many wonderful, admirable makers out there that I would die to sit at the table with.
Excellent. So. Well, I thank you for the time. Thank you for the insights, and we appreciate having you here on the podcast.
Thanks, John.
This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.